psychologist at the Child Mind Institute. We're a national nonprofit that supports children and families with gold standard mental health care, advice, and resources, all online and accessible to everyone. During the coronavirus crisis, our telehealth resources include diagnosis and treatment of mental health and learning disorders, 30-minute phone consultations, bereavement and grief support, and remote neuropsychological evaluations. Now, that's just a sampling. Please visit childmind.org/telehealth to learn more. Today, I'd like to talk about communicating with teachers during COVID-19 again and answer your questions about that and anything else you're wondering about. Post your questions in the feed. We'll also post some links to helpful resources on childmind.org. Remember, we're here every day and we look through your questions daily. So welcome to our afternoon edition. If families don't have any initial questions at the moment, remember, we're looking through them right now in that chat box, as well as just kind of throughout the day. I'm going to just kind of start with some questions that we've already gotten. So our first question is from Tiffany, and she wants to know, what questions should I be asking my child's teacher right now? Well, I think the questions that you should ask are going to be kind of dependent on kind of what's going on right now. Now, for many families, and this is, of course, dependent on what state that you live in, school has been canceled as far as just kind of going to school and being present in the classroom for the remainder of the year. And so it's just pretty much distance learning, distance learning, distance learning. Now, exactly when that stops for each family is, definitely going to be dependent on like what state you live in. But for many families, it's just only going to be a couple more weeks. So one thing that I would be thinking and encouraging families to also think about is, as far as any of the assignments that you've gotten thus far, how much of those has your child completed? And now, as we're going into the summer, it's really unclear kind of what the summer is going to look like as far as, just kind of camps and being able to go to camps, how your kids are going to spend their time. So, if you have assignments that you just kind of couldn't get to based off of what's been going on now, that might be a good time to kind of figure out what they can work on during that time. So that could either be assignments that you hadn't gotten to, or potentially your teachers may have additional resources, worksheets, recommended books for your kids to start to review some of the material in preparation for the fall. Now, also just keep in mind that for many families during this time, learning online has been kind of far inferior as it's been compared to being in the classroom setting. And so just kind of the amount of information and the quality of the information that your child would have gotten while in the classroom has been very different from what it's been being at home and to do distance learning. And so with that being said, I think it would be pretty important for kind of all kids to be working on academic skills, even if it's just a kind of a review of things just throughout the summer. And so I think that's going to be one of those main things that you're going to want to ask teachers about, is just, how do I prepare for the summer? What sort of activities or resources should I be reviewing or assigning to my child? So I hope that helps. Okay. So our next question is from Jocelyn. She writes, remote learning is not manageable for my family anymore. We've decided to let our kids take incompletes and return when school is back in session. What do I say to my child's teacher? So I think this is a fairly straightforward answer in me just saying to be honest. And I don't think it's necessary for you to go into, the details of why it's not working. I feel like many teachers understand that this is a very much a trying time for everyone involved. And so if it's not working for your family, it's not working. And so just kind of letting your teachers know that, your child's not going to be able to kind of complete all of the necessary work. I think it would be helpful if you'd give the teacher an opportunity to see if there's anything that can be done as far as prioritizing certain coursework over others, and any sort of recommended kind of tools or supports that might be available to you that you're just kind of not aware of right now. One thing that I think about, because I'm sure there are many families that feel this way, and I would definitely encourage families as best as possible to try not to just completely give up. There might have to be some sort of a compromise. Maybe you can't do every single day. That just might be too much. Or just the time demands are too much as well, and so you have to cut back. Is to try and find some level of a compromise as far as what type of schoolwork your child can do, even if it means they haven't done everything that was assigned. I think doing something is always going to be better than doing nothing because, as I've mentioned earlier, um, the learning that they've received right now at home for a lot of kids is just not even comparable to what they would typically receive in the classroom. And so we just really want to try and practice those skills that they already have, so that they're not as far behind, kind of going forward. Another thing that I am also thinking about too is, this writer notes, waiting until school is back in session. We don't necessarily have a definitive answer on when that's going to be. There are even certain um, states and schools that are just kind of considering, our kids actually going back in the fall. And so because we definitely don't have a definitive answer on that, and some of that is just definitely going to be where you live, I wouldn't kind of put all our eggs in the basket of let's not do anything and let's just kind of wait for our kids to go back to school in the fall because that may not happen. So I think it's just important for every family to kind of consider that. Now let's look at another question that we've got. So Elvira asks, how do I make a teen do homework? He doesn't want to do any. Well, something tells me that these problems are not specific to just the coronavirus. Getting kids to do homework is rough. So, one of the first things that I would want to think about is how much homework is it that you're asking them to do? I think it's best to be as realistic as possible. I mean, you know your child better than anyone else. And if it's 6 hours of homework that's being expected, maybe that's not going to be realistic. Maybe for your child, it's going to be 2 hours of homework. So we want to start with making sure those expectations are realistic, even if that means breaking homework assignments down into possibly doing them at different points of the day, and then spreading them out through the week. As far as motivation goes, a lot of kids don't like homework. And so to expect that they are going to just intrinsically, meaning they're going to internally want to do it, that's probably not as likely as we would hope for. Oftentimes, kids need external motivators to get things done. So one way that we can do this is by providing rewards, such as if you get your homework done, then you'll get to watch, TV or play video games or go outside in the backyard or something like that, or with consequences, such as if you don't do your homework, you don't get X, Y, or Z. So that's also something worth considering, is what sort of maybe rewards or consequences can you implement, as well as just managing what those expectations are to get your team to do their homework. Um, okay, so here's another question. This is from Madeline. So Madeline apparently is going through the same thing. She's not getting any support from the teacher, and she doesn't know why she's a great teacher. Hopefully I read that correctly. So Madeline's asking, how do I not transfer anxiety to my kids? Great question. Um, what I would say is, as best as you can, try to speak to your child and present somewhat of a calm front. Now, while it's okay to feel very anxious, what you don't want to do is discuss the things that make you very anxious to your child, as in some way it makes them feel like they have to do something about it to help you from stopping from feeling so anxious. Um, Even if you're coming across situations that are going to be really difficult and very anxiety provoking, as best as you can, trying to phrase them in more of like a problem focused type of orientation. This is what's worrying me, and here's what I'm going to try and do about it. Even if that's something that maybe doesn't fix it completely, but just kind of giving them a sense of hope that things can get better, I think is going to be very important for your kids, because a lot of times anxiety is about worrying about just kind of future things, right? And you can get stuck in that when the situation is very unpredictable and you just kind of feel like there's nothing that you can do about it. And so letting kids see you have some sort of problem solving strategy, some sort of way that you can convey to them that you're figuring things out, that can be really helpful in not making kids anxious. And I also see here too that you're just kind of overwhelmed with schoolwork. That's definitely something that is going on with so many other families. And so I think, once again, just trying to be very realistic about what those expectations are is going to be very important. Now, remember, when teachers are giving assignments to all their students, they have to set some sort of amount, some sort of quantity for that. And unfortunately, they don't have the ability to kind of take into everyone's sort of personal circumstances. And so that's kind of where you come in to kind of decide, what do you think is going to be realistic for your household with that in mind. Because probably my guess is that a lot of the curriculum and a lot of the instruction provided right now is based off of the classroom learning setting, where teachers are presently there with your child all day. And what we know is that in that home environment, that's just not realistic for many families. And so making those modifications, and finding ways to make it work for your family, even if it's not necessarily what the teacher has assigned, is once again better than nothing. Thanks for your questions, guys. So, Lynn wants to know, what are the best resources to give new teachers in the high school to explain, I'm guessing, selective mutism and social anxiety? What are some good resources to share with her counselor who doesn't get making a plan and following through with selective mutism? Now, okay, so as I mentioned earlier, I work at the Child Mind Institute, and I think when it comes to resources, um, one thing I would want to know is whether or not your child already has a therapist. And if so, I would want to direct this question to your child's therapist. And, just kind of throwing it out there, Child Mind Institute um, has so many clinicians that are trained with selective mutism and social anxiety. A lot of evidence-based treatments, and we're currently doing a lot of telehealth work right now with families, probably going through the same stuff that your family's going through. And so, I think the best person to direct this to would be your child's therapist, who would have those resources um, on hand and then could recommend those things to you. Um, but I think you bring up a really big and important point in just that, particularly in the mental health field, just because your child is dealing with it, we falsely assume that educators and other professionals who also work with kids, that they get it and that they know exactly what your child is dealing with, kind of whatever that diagnosis is. And uh, unsurprisingly, there's a lot of assumptions that are made, um, false information that's out there. And so education is really important to all parties involved. And I think it's important to kind of never assume that people just know, that people just know what selective mutism is, right? That you just kind of ask a kid enough times to talk, that they'll just eventually talk. Um, it doesn't necessarily work that way. And so I'm really glad that you're thinking about wanting to provide resources, um, for professionals in your child's school, because I think that would kind of make a world of a difference. And what could also be helpful too is if your child's therapist could reach out to kind of teachers, if you sign some sort of a release to give them permission to do that, because they are going to be the experts in that, and they may also um, do a good job just kind of explaining that to them, or even kind of providing you with the necessary language so that you can explain it, or even um, you know having some sort of written documentation about it. Okay, so let's go to another question. This question is from Rebecca, and what she wants to know is what kind of services should schools be offering to children with IEPs? All right, so this is now a kind of different subset of children who have individualized education plans, also known as IEPs. So first thing I'm going to say is just kind of my big disclaimer there is, now state laws are going to differ. And so it's going to be important for every family that has a child with an IEP that has these types of questions to seek information from their state Department of Education, from their local school district, as well as from the U.S. Departments of Education. They frequently have up-to-date information on their COVID page. So kind of when in doubt, those are three primary areas that I would recommend you go for information. Now, with that being said, there's a lot of variety right now and variability, because uh, how we're all handling this, kind of through each state, even just by school district, is very different. We've got some families where kids all have tablets and laptops in the home, um, who may have much more access to parents that can be present for sessions. And then other families where they've got multiple kids and maybe they've only got one computer. And so there's a lot of sharing of things. And maybe a parent can't possibly be present. They're only present to put in a password for an online learning program, and then they've got to go and then jump on a call for themselves. So with that being said, what I think is that IEP services that are listed in the IEP, as best as possible, what schools should do is to try and replicate that. Now, sometimes that can be relatively simple, like for instance, for kids who are receiving possibly speech therapy services, they can get speech therapy services virtually. Now, for kids who are receiving more like behavioral support interventions or like a paraprofessional, well, you might not be able to get anybody to come to your house, right, and to kind of help regulate your child's behavior. So that might not be that realistic. So I'd like to open this question up to all of our viewers who are watching this. Why don't you let us know if you have any kids that do receive IEPs? Kind of let us know what state you're from and what sort of supports are being provided for your child. I think that that would be really helpful. Or else we're just kind of throwing things out there that might not be realistic for your school district as far as what they can do. Um, so, I definitely look forward to kind of reading those things, as well as I'm sure many other families would really just kind of appreciate your input during this time. Okay, so all right, so we only have a couple of minutes left. Now, I still encourage families because some people might not be able to um, tune in right at the time that we kind of air this, but they might watch this a little bit later. So, of course, we really, um, are grateful for your comments, the questions that you had, as well as just any additional input that you have to provide. So, with that being said, I want to thank you all again for joining me. I hope it was helpful. And remember, we're here every day and we look through your questions daily. The Childmind Institute is here to help with the mental health and parenting needs of this coronavirus crisis, no matter where you are. Please visit childmind.org/telehealth to learn more about the incredible variety of remote telehealth resources we have available during this time for children, teens, and young adults. Be safe and thank you.